Welcome back to West Texas View.
Loretta has had a very successful career as a journalist in many areas, and most journalists are pretty broad-based. They're not just newspaper or magazine or book writers. And so she has tried to give us a good basic overview of how she went about the different ways of getting into the writing of books. But before we go any further, talk about how important it is for people to look around them and see the stories in their lives and write them down.
It's extremely important. So, I think sometimes people just think, well, my own story, my own family, there's nothing interesting here. Well, that's just not true. No. If you're wanting to be a writer, look at your own family. Look at your family's stories. That's a great place to start. Everybody's got good family stories, and many of them that's a history that needs to be preserved, and the family's the only one that's going to do that.
And full of characters, good and bad,
right?
And full of interesting stories. And you just need to preserve that for the history of your family. And with the ease of genealogy research now, you can get all that research just from your home computer.
You can. For me, being a journalist, my career has been in journalism, and it's just a natural for me. I'm always interested in the stories about people around me, and people in Abilene know that, and that's why, like for this book, a woman had read the first book I did, and after she read it, came up to me and started talking to me about all these women pilots in Abilene, and so I took that, and I knew that was a story when she mentioned it to me, and then I got into the research of it and ended up with a book.
And found out it really was. It was more than just a newspaper article or a magazine article. It was too much.
Too much for one story.
But you know, when you look around as a family and think, you know, somebody ought to tell about my grandmother or tell about this side of my family, and your family will thank you for the rest of your life if you write it down.
They will.
And it doesn't really matter if you're a journalist or not. Just write
it down. Yeah, that's true.
And somebody else can edit it for you. But and then how easy it is, and really relatively inexpensive to self-publish.
It is.
There's
some investment in it.
This is a pretty thin book. Your book by Dr. Conley wasn't much thicker than this.
It was probably almost twice as big as this one. But this one is written more of individual stories in individual chapters rather than a long sustained
than the life
narrative.
of a person,
right?
You know, like you did. But then the next thing I want us to talk about is, once someone decides, okay, well, I do have a story to tell, I would like to tell this story, or even of a neighbor or something, then what motivates? How do you get people motivated to doing that?
To doing the book, to writing it down?
To sit down and actually start it.
I think you have to have a natural interest to start with. A natural desire, like for me, that's always come naturally, and that's why I went into journalism as a career.
And words come naturally.
It does. It's fairly easy for me to do. But even if you don't consider yourself a writer, get the information down.
Don't worry about style
don't worry
or
about
anything.
that. Just get it down, and so that it's preserved. But for a lot of people, they'll want to take it farther than that. Like in the book I did about Virginia Conley is a good example. I had known about her forever, and for a long time I kept thinking somebody needs to preserve Virginia Conley's story because she's a treasure
amazing
in
story.
Abilene and beyond, and her story needs to be preserved. And I kept thinking that somebody needs to do this, and finally it dawned on me, maybe I'm the one that needs to do this, and so I did. I just got started on it, and that will happen. You know, if you keep hearing a little voice in you saying somebody needs to do whatever. It may dawn on you eventually that you're the one that needs to do it.
Well, I had a family that I knew that did it, and it was two sisters, and they collaborated on it. Mm-hmm. And then before the book was finished, a cousin came in and helped with it. And so it really became a family affair rather than just one person taking on that responsibility. So it doesn't matter how you do it, just think about doing it. And again, if you've got any questions about the process, then I would imagine that Loretta might answer your question.
I'd be happy to help.
If you send her a question about it. But the next thing I want us to talk about is after you got it published, now what are you doing to look ahead to your next project?
Okay.
Have you got a lot of other ideas?
No, I don't. I have, of course, my daily work that I do, but I have no doubt that there will be a next one. It's just somebody, just like with this book, somebody will mention something to me and say, you might be interested in this, and I'll look into it, and sure enough, I'll be interested in it.
Or it'll incubate for a little while.
It will, or something will just start, that little voice will start again saying, somebody needs to tell this story, and eventually I'll realize that to me. One thing I warn against is trying to push it. Don't think that just because you've got something finished, you have to have the next thing to get started on. You don't want to just manufacture an idea.
It's got to be a labor of love.
Yes, the good stories will come. You have to be observant, and you have to know a good story when you see it or hear it, but don't try to rush things. Let it come to you. You don't need to start to think, I've got to follow this up with something else right now, because it just doesn't work if you just try to manufacture something.
And I know that in my own work, when I'm starting a project, if I'll just let it incubate in my brain for a little while, then I'll decide what direction I want
That's very good advice. Let it simmer for a while.
But this book is so interesting, so fascinating, because it really outlines these 9 women that were just everyday women. They're just good old West Texas women, and they went off on their own dream, and then we get to follow it and get to see the reactions of the people around them. So I hope that you will contact Loretta or me, and we'll talk about this book a little bit more, and we'll see you next Sunday with another program, and we thank Loretta for being here today.
Thanks for joining us for News West 9's West Texas View with Johnny Lou Avery. This has been a public affairs presentation of KWAB-TV and KWES-TV.